Testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Right. Hey, good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to this afternoon's presentation on parenting skills, and we're very happy this afternoon to have Pastor Daron and his wife Lisa presenting some topics pertaining to rewiring our children's brains. Now, there will be 2 sessions this afternoon. Each of them will be 45 minutes each. So after the first session, there will be a 10-minute break before we go into the second session. There will be a slip of paper handed out to you if you would like to raise questions, and if you're too scared to ask them in person. And also, I'd like to remind you that this session, these seminars are being live streamed, and it will also be recorded. So if you want to look at these presentations later on, you're welcome to do so. So before we start, we invite you to just bow our heads in for a short word of prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us together on this Sabbath day, and in particular on this afternoon as we look at parenting skills and the importance of family. And as we look at the topic today about our children's brains and their mental health and the like, we invite your presence to be with us, to give us understanding, Lord, to what Pastor Daron and Lisa has to share with us. This is my prayer, amen. Thank you. All right, over to you, Pastor Daron and Lisa.
Yeah, thank you for your welcome. It is good to be with you this afternoon and to be presenting alongside my wife, Lisa. Maybe Lisa, start by saying your background and what qualifies you to be not as a parent, but someone that is able to help me today.
I have a social welfare background. It's not actually a social work degree, but social welfare. So Bachelor of Social Science. And then I went back to uni and I did a teaching degree. And I, on and off, for the last 20-ish years, I've worked as a learning and support teacher in local schools. I've also taught every subject possible around about doing learning and support. I currently work in a school where we have fairly low socioeconomic background, but we've got an absolutely amazing staff there, and we work very, very hard with our students and with our parents collaboratively to help those students reach their potential. And we're really thrilled to say that a huge amount of my students, they end up at uni or they end up with fabulous apprenticeships and traineeships that give them a really great future. So that's my background.
And what I like about Lisa's work is she's making a difference child by child. Often arrive very stressed, or often when they had out of school suspensions, Lisa deals with them coming back in to reintegrate them. But also I've seen so many children that have been changed through the work of Lisa in the schools as well. But also, I guess what qualifies us both is that we are the parents of 2 young adult children, Andrew and Madison, and of course our newest daughter, Michaela, they're the parents of our grandson, Luca, who is 2 years old. Absolute delight, he's full on. And my newest son, just got back from the UK, and my newest son is Dan now, so Madison and Dan have got married. So
we did too good a job of parenting, because as parents we want to bring our children up to want to conquer the world, and you want them to fly and to be independent. And
not quite UK independent, but...
Yeah, so Madison's flown to the UK. She and Dan met 5.5 years ago, and they got married a month ago yesterday.
Yes.
So the 5th of August they got married. Fortunately, Andrew and Michaela, they've done a little bit of flying around northern New South Wales, and now they've landed back where we live, which is nice.
It's good to have a grandson that's just 10 minutes away. that we can, yes, I delight in him. He calls me Papa, and we have a lot of fun together. But let's get into our presentation. And basically, I guess Les can talk from the school side of things, where some of these things that we're talking about are happening as well when it comes to technology and to all the changes that are about to happen around that. So the first session is the great rewiring our children's brains. We have some question we'll answer coming up from last time, which relates into some of this. And if you have any other questions, feel free to write them down or else ask them in our question time, and we will endeavour to answer those. But we're going to move fairly quickly because we have short sessions and a lot to pack in. My wife's a good timekeeper, so she'll help me skip forward, being a teacher, if we need to, but to cover the information at the same time. The first session is the great rewiring of children's brains. Jonathan Haidt wrote this book, we talked about this morning, The Anxious Generation. And this book has been on the bestseller since it came out in about April last year, and is available in all good bookstores. And Jonathan Haidt is probably the most podcast person at the moment. Most of the good parenting podcasts have interviewed Jonathan Haidt. He's a social psychologist. He's also grew up a Jew, and a lot of that comes through his Jewish upbringing, which is very similar, of course, to an Adventist upbringing in many ways, including the Sabbath, and he refers to that in his work as well. So I really resonated with a lot of what he presented. And what he says in the book is that there's two trends that have occurred in our society here in the Western world, America, Australia, most Western countries today. That's the overprotection in the real world of our children and the underprotection in the virtual world. This is why he says children born after 1995 became known as the anxious generation. And that's his big premise in this book. And he has a lot of evidence to back it up. He says there were three great acts that led to what he sees as the great rewiring of our children's brain. Act one, he says, was the loss of community, the loss of trust in each other. This occurred in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. I remember some of this. Sure you do too, Lisa. I was born 1960s, end of 1960s.
I'm born 1970.
Yes, so we're right in the midst of this. And I know at least when I was growing up, there was a TV, but a little black and white TV. It was kept in Mum and Dad's bedroom, and we were privileged to be able to go and watch play school, sometimes the occasional sport game. Dad would turn on for the news, but other than then, it was mainly turned off. It wasn't there.
And I grew up in a household with no TV. I was in high school when we would occasionally have one. I think Dad would borrow one if he wanted to check videos out from the local church. But I was 17 and nearly finished high school when we had a TV for the first time. Do you know what? We didn't really miss it.
I think you guys mainly turned on for the Olympic Games, I remember rightly.
Yeah, Dad used to hire one every time there was an Olympic or Commonwealth Games. So that was where we were a radio family who listened to the ABC.
Yes.
And we still listen to ABC radio because it teaches you so many amazing things.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I want to bring through is we're not today saying technology is bad.
No, we actually have a TV. It's rarely used.
Turned on.
In fact, we can't remember the last time we turned it on. But our children are the same. They will watch movies from one of the streaming services, but the digital screen has actually not ended up being a big thing for our kids. Probably our kids use digital sources to read books as much as anything else.
And to do academic research.
Yeah, and to do academic research.
But during the 1950s and 60s, television comes on the scene and air conditioning. And what Haidt says is people moved from their verandas, where they talk to their neighbours and trust their neighbours, into their homes because it's nice and cool, and we have the TV. And the family would gather around to watch shows like The Flying Doctors and Neighbours and
Practice.
yes, all those sorts of shows that you got a regular once evening or generally once a week it came on, and the family would gather around. You would all watch it. When the break came on, the ads would race to the bathroom or to get a snack, whatever else. Someone would yell it's back on, you'd all race back to watch it, but you watched it as a family. But we began to lose trust in our neighbours and our community. And that's Act 1. Act 2, John Haidt says, was the loss of unsupervised, that's the key there, unsupervised outdoor play. This happened in the 1990s. He says somewhere we'd heard, whether it actually happened or not, was that child abductions were occurring. Now there probably was one or two, but he says we were actually fairly safe back then. But because we had stranger danger, I remember back then we had neighbourhood safe houses you could run to on the streets. Because of the idea of stranger danger abduction, we as parents began to worry about our kids being out in the streets. We wanted to know where they were, wanted to know that they were safe. And so the idea of intergenerational, where you had teens and children and young children all playing together out in the street playing cricket or football or just getting lost in the bush and exploring in the bush, all those things have largely disappeared because we want our children.
But we have to remember
safe.
at that same point in time, communities became way more mobile, and it wasn't that we didn't want to trust our neighbours, but they weren't families that we'd known for 3 generations. They were people who just moved in. We also lost a lot of bush and recreation areas, and our lives became way more suburban.
Yeah.
And so that was the other thing. Kids must always be supervised. We started to learn that children don't really develop the ability to make safe decisions until they're at least 8. Yeah. And so as parents, we became more watchful to make sure that our kid wasn't the one who got onto the railway tracks and got run over. I certainly know that was the case with me.
Yeah. But what I noticed in the UK more over there recently was that they're trying to bring back this idea of free play. And the term wild is what they're using. So they have a lot of dense housing, but they have a lot of town commons, very large town commons with a duck pond, with wilding areas where they're trying to bring insects back because they lost a lot of their insects, but also when a tree falls down in their parks now, they don't pick it up and saw it up and take it away. They leave it there for kids to play on. And so all this idea of play and kids being off screens and playing is what UK is really pushing hard right now. And it's great to see. I think in Australia, you've got to watch that we don't lose our green spaces in our need for housing and the spaces where kids can actually play, free play together. The third act, Act 3, 90s onwards, is the invention of the internet. Now back then, we thought it was going to be great. I remember hearing that the internet was going to do everything for us. The computer was going to, revolutionise our lives. And it did. And we thought it was a good thing for our kids to be on the internet. But then 2010 to 2015 is what, and Haidt can almost identify the dates, and I'll show you some graphs shortly, was the rise of phone or screen-based childhood. And this, he says, was the third great tragedy. So there's a loss of community and trust, moving indoors, the loss of free, unsupervised play outdoors, and then indoors and on screen are the 3 great acts. He says there's 3 great tragedies that led to what he calls the rewiring of our kids' brains. The confluence of these 3 stories, especially the years 2010 and 15, is what he calls the great rewiring of our kids' brains. So, according to Pew Research, in Australia now, I think these stats are now slightly out of date, the average Australian child spends 5 hours a day on social media. I'm not sure if that's a good thing, or probably not so much if it's 5 hours a day. Most time is on TikTok and short videos. 35 hours a week on the internet. Now, I'm not saying that's all bad either, But you add in video games, and our kids are spending 7 to 10 hours a day on their screen.
You just have to be aware that if they've got a smartwatch, your kids' devices might be putting that time in. So it looks like I'm spending huge amounts of time on the internet. Vast majority of that's actually coming from my watch. So you need to check individual devices, not your cumulative.
That's right. And watches are much easier to be locked down. I say to parents, want to give your kids a screen, a smart watch is probably the best way to go. They can still get some access to messaging and especially in Wi-Fi and some of those sorts of access to actually contact people, but it's fairly locked down. According to this book I'm currently reading, Dr. Caitlin Rieger, she's UK, she says that 75% of girls have experienced digital flashing. That's the sending of unsolicited nudes by the age of 15. 75%. And 62% of 11, 13-year-olds have been exposed to porn unintentionally. Average age of exposure now to pornography is 7. So that concerns me as a dad and a granddad and as a pastor, that these kids are getting unsolicited messages and they're getting access to porn either on their phone or on their friend's phone, and they've seen it by the age of 7.
So our son was exposed to his first, I don't know if we'd call it porn, but his first sexualised stuff at school by a kid who came home or came to school and said, "Hey, this has been at home and it wasn't that bad," but he Googled something and brought it up. I'm not going to say it out loud because we're being recorded and screened. And Daron and I were absolutely horrified because our kids are talkers. So
at least we taught them to, it's one big clue.
We taught them to talk.
Talk.
And so obviously...
Don't be afraid to talk to their parents about anything.
So obviously the teacher had me on the phone and the deputy principal, and I believe something went home to the parents about, if you're into this type of stuff, please make sure that it's not somewhere where your kids can access it, because grade 4 kids do not need to know about some things.
Yeah. So as Haidt says, Gen Z became the first generation in history to go through puberty with a portal in their pockets that called them away from people nearby, including parents, and into an alternative universe that was exciting, addictive, unstable, and at times unsuitable for children and adolescents. He says there were 4 foundational harms that came from this. Number 1 was social deprivation. This is probably a big one, especially for our boys, because girls still tend to talk more than boys. Boys have retreated to their bedrooms to play games, whereas at least girls still get out there and talk to each other more than boys. The loss of face-to-face communication, play and connection to nature. That's been the first foundational harm. What's the second one, Lisa?
Sleep deprivation.
Why?
Okay, so kids will go to bed and they will have a phone with them or on a device, and they'll be chatting to their friends, they'll be reading, and obviously, it's the doom scrolling where you're looking at Facebook Reels or TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. And then you realise that about an hour or 2 hours has gone by. So frequently I'm talking to students and they're not doing well, and I'm like, "What's wrong? You look tired." "Oh yeah, I couldn't sleep." "Well, what happened?" Not all the time, but quite frequently the kids will say, "I was just scrolling and looking at things, at reels on my social media, and before I knew it, it was 3 a.m. And my school starts at 8 a.m. Everyone, kids and students, have to be there by 8. We actually start at 8:10. And so, you've got to be up by 7-ish to get to school. And so these kids are coming to school with 4 or 5 hours sleep if we're lucky. And poor quality sleep.
Concentrate and learning class.
You cannot concentrate, you cannot learn, and obviously we're a very proactive school, but quite often you'll find that the kids will just go to sleep because they've been connected to their technology overnight.
Yep, and also, of course, there is the light from the screen, melatonin, affects melatonin, and their circadian rhythm.
So the blue light, phones emit what's called a blue light, and that is that's the part of the spectrum, the light spectrum, that our brains use to stay awake. So if it's a yellow light, it's not a bad light, but the blue light in particular isn't good. It's recommended that students or people have no phones for about an hour or two before you go to bed. I'm not very good with this because I've always
You never go to sleep.
No, I don't have... I have a bit of insomnia. So I will read, but I've learned that I can now pick when I'm starting to get tired and I physically put my phone away. So I don't social media a lot with my phone. It's mainly I use it to read all kinds of stuff on. So I put it away and then I've discovered that I'm actually sleeping better. So we say to kids, okay, yes, you can read, but at some point in time, we have to have good sleep hygiene. We're going to develop the habit that the phone goes into mum and dad's room, it gets plugged in there, it'll go somewhere else in the house, but no tech in your bedroom.
It's a very good rule.
It's a really good rule, and it's something that needs to be developed from the time children are toddlers.
Very much so. And one of our questions came in was getting phones out of bedrooms and getting kids off screens. And we'll talk about that in the third session about boundaries, but to start young and start early, have those rules in place, and remember that you are the parent. And there are no-go zones, no bedroom, no tech goes into bedrooms. No, but bathroom is a no-no, meal times is a no-no. Have those sanitised areas where phones, screens, including yours, Dad, doesn't go, is a good clue to have. Number 3 was attention fragmentation. The ability to stay on one mental road while many off-ramps threaten. And Jonathan Haidt says this is the biggest thing, not just for our children, but for us. When there's beeps, when there's tweets, when you're scrolling, when your phone is buzzing, it's easy for you to lose focus and to go down different rabbit holes and not be able to stay on task. That's especially so for our children, but also for us.
Kids and adults have FOMO, fear of missing out, and it's okay to teach them that we often do not need to be connected 24/7. It is okay to put the phone in the bedroom and to go to the other end of the house or outside and do something without it. I'm really good at doing that. I do miss a few things, but that's okay. We catch up when we come back.
Yep. Johan, I mean, our grandparents survived, our parents survived, so, yep. And maybe we'll be better for it. Johan Hari wrote the book Stolen Focus, which actually looks at this attention fragmentation and what it's doing to all of us, especially our children. Number 4 of the 4 foundational harms is addiction. The use of advanced behavioural techniques to hook children into becoming heavy users of their products. The phones are designed so you'll keep them in your pocket. So that's the first thing you look at in the morning and the last thing you look at before you go to sleep. That's how they're designed by the tech psychologists to keep us on our screens 24/7. We'll talk about the teen brain next session and why our kids can't resist that, let alone us. But addiction is real, it's now listed. Tech addiction, screen addiction, gaming addiction are listed as real addictions that affect the brain the same way as drugs, alcohol and tobacco.
And yes, we are having student diagnoses reports come through from paediatricians and psychologists and psychiatrists with gaming and screen addiction on it. It's not good for the child and it's not good for their learning.
And often you'll see it in your child when you take the screens off them and you'll see the reaction you get, the screaming, the yelling, the kicking, the uncontrollable, they just flip the lid. That is early signs of addiction. And yeah, it's something we need to be aware of and teach our kids what moderation, balance looks like, especially in the area of tech. This is Australian David Gillespie wrote The Great Brain Reset, and he said he wrote a book about sugar. His wife gives him topics to research. He's a lawyer, but he's also a researcher. His wife said, you should have a look at technology. He said, oh, that's not a problem. Well, when he looked at that and investigated, he found it was. He said, just like with sugar, most Australians are now addicted to some form of electronic dopamine stimulator. It might be sexual porn, approval porn, social media, danger porn, he calls gaming, or all of them, but the addiction is there and so are the consequences. He says anxiety and depression in teens has doubled in the decade since these mobile phones were placed into our hands and our children in the year 2010. Now skip forward though, they're saying the same thing and watching our time. So how's our time going, Lisa? We're going well. We've got 10 minutes. We might start our trip into the teen brain and we'll take a break right on time, but we're going to start exploring, because this is a bit more detail and we'd like to get through it before we leave today. So, a brief trip into the teen brain. The brain begins to develop in utero during the 3rd week of gestation and is complete by the age of what? 25. That's why insurance companies charge a higher premium for our children when they start driving, because they know that they're not going to be really responsible until they're age 25. And so this has implications for parenting as well. Realise that the brain is undergoing huge development and is still developing until the age of 25.
And this is why, as parents, our kids turned 18, they were halfway through high school. We actually didn't stop parenting our kids. In fact, our kids are independent. They're both married, and obviously we are hands off, but we also still parent. And by that I mean we have conversations around big decisions, because their brains have really only just finished developing, and they are awesome kids who make great decisions, but they're also sensible and say, hey, I haven't got the life experience and our brains have really only just matured. We kind of need to find out more about the topic. So we didn't stop parenting, but what we did is we moved to having ongoing long-term conversations with our children that helped guide them into making safe decisions.
In more of a coaching role as they grow up.
It's a coach.
Yeah.
So we moved from parenting to coaching.
I was thinking last night we were leaving, Andrew, he's married, he's got a lovely wife, we love her dearly, and a beautiful grandson. But as we're leaving, he came out to the car. He just wanted to talk to mum and dad and get our input and advice on the things that he was worried about. And even though he's now growing up and independent, he still wants some dad and mum advice.
Yep, Madison will ring me on the way to school from England. Mum, I'm having a really tough day. She's got a great job, but it's really, really challenging, and it may not be the job for her because she's going to stick at it, but she's learning and realising that in life it's okay to do a job and to say, hey, this is a good job, but it's not for me, but then how to make responsible and wise decisions about how to change the direction of her employment.
Yeah, which is what she's going through right now.
Which is what she's going through right now.
She's not happy. She enjoys the money and the pay, but not the job experience. So that's what her dilemma. So we're getting regular phone calls to just discuss the options and to pray with her and to encourage her.
But she's making some amazing adult decisions that aren't rash and undisciplined, which is why we're so proud of her.
From birth to 18 months, the brain triples in size to 75% of its adult size. It grows more slowly to 90% of its size by the age of 11. Neurons, synapses connected and pathways are being made that become increasingly hardwired. This is why we want our kids to experience not just on screen, but off screen as well, and a wide variety of different things, learning an instrument, playing a sport, being involved in pathfinders and adventures, and all those different things that life has to offer, because different parts of the brain are being wired in. And the idea of use it or lose it is what happens here. So if your child is just a couch potato on their screen, their brain will hardwire them to do that. This is a book I've just been reading recently, which describes it like this: neural nets are our constellations. Developing at the same time as neural nets, patterns of neurons that drive at the same time. I like to think of neural nets as constellations. There are billions of stars and billions of neurons. Some stars are linked together to form constellations. Like stars, some are in more than one constellation, and the same with neurons. In other words, your brain is setting up what it needs for its adult life, and it forms these neural, if you like, constellations of what it thinks it needs for the adult brain to work. What she says is, when your child has an experience, their brain lights up in a particular pattern of neurons. If the experience is repeated enough times, these neurons wire together and eventually they create a neural net. Add in gaming, where your kids get a little bit of dopamine every time they play that game. Or social media, when you see the likes and the hearts, a little drip of dopamine when they do that to make them stay online for longer. You can see why we have a problem with our teenage brains when this is going on. Then we have myelin that wraps itself around the nerves, that creates the brake side of the autonomic nervous system and helps the brakes work faster and better. For a child well attached to caregivers, more myelin growth occurs, meaning more regulation and a wider window of stress tolerance, which is why I talked about the power of attached dads this morning and what it does for the brain when it comes to this. Teenage years, things change. Your suddenly beautiful Madison turns feral. Is there any way to describe it? In fact, one dad described it like a fish. When you pull a fish out of water, its tail goes this way and that way and this way and that way. When teenage, especially with girls, but also with boys, when teenage hormones kick in and his brain begins to change, or his adult brain, the Madison I knew and love, I still love her, but it got a bit lost in all of the moods and all of the ups and downs, and yeah.
And this process can last for several years.
It comes back in about the age 18.
Girls about 16.
Yeah. So what happens is during teenage years there's a massive synaptic pruning to make the brain more efficient.
So in our case and our experience, girls will often get cranky and they want something, they don't want something. Boys during this period will often retreat to their bedrooms and not talk to everyone for 2 or 3 years. And I'll admit it, we did not get the full effect with either of our kids.
Yeah, so what's happening to the teenage brain is this myelin, the white matter, grows like a sheath around the axons and neurons. This means that the pruning down of existing neurons and the laying down of myelin sheaths, connecting the remaining linked neurons in simplified language. Once again, whatever the brain is being used for is what gets wired in.
So
it is plastic and it don't change.
Yeah. So in other words, while your children are during those developing years, you want to expose them to as many things as you can, like music and physical exercise, being outside, things that pathfinders and adventurers do. You want them to be reading, you want them to be writing, because that uses up a bigger portion of their brain, which means that as they start to prune the unused parts, they've got bigger capabilities to fall back on when they're in a stressful situation. And obviously, if they're exposed to dopamine all the time, things that are not so thrilling, like studying, reading, writing, doing mathematics, you get the kids who are always high on the dopamine, they come into class, they are unable to focus, they don't learn their spelling words, they don't broaden their vocabulary, which you need to go through high school and into university. Yeah, they don't read, they don't listen to the news, they don't have a big world view, a wide world view, because they're just focused on that narrow path of something like Roblox, Minecraft. They all have their places. Fortnite's another one that's really bad. And they will pick up what's in those instead of going, hey, there is more to my life than just this. Daron and I are not perfect parents, but I was a bit of a Nazi and we had a PlayStation 2. Yep. And it belonged to Daron. He got given it for Christmas.
Mine. Father's Day, wasn't it?
Christmas.
Yep.
But the kids were only allowed access to that occasionally during the school holidays or the odd Saturday night when there were friends over. And that was really on purpose because I knew that if they were constantly hyped up on the dopamine and the adrenaline of playing those games, then when it came to their regular, everyday, boring learning, they actually wouldn't develop those basic academic skills that would see them through the rest of their life. And we didn't have any of the research when I did it, but that's what my gut instincts said. Fortunately, Daron was really supportive. We had a couple
Initially, talk about that. I was talking in the car about that idea. Initially, I used to get up in the morning. I would turn on the TV to make sure the world hadn't ended.
Daron said I'm not allowed to make him look silly. And I said, if you tell the story, you're not going to look silly. You're going to look like an adult who actually grew.
So I was watching, it's making me vulnerable now, and I was watching TV in the mornings first up. What happened to Andrew? Particularly Andrew.
Andrew loved the news. He's really, really smart. But his brain focuses in on electronics because that's just how his brain does. And he wouldn't
He's got what we call atypical autism.
Yeah, and ADHD.
Yep.
So he's quite open about it, but I'm just trying to be a tad respectful of his... no, he's brilliant. And what we're doing is he would get hyper-focused on it and he wouldn't want to eat breakfast and he wouldn't want to get dressed and he didn't want to get his backpack packed and he didn't want to get in the car. So
his brain was fried.
His brain was fried because what happens if students or children are exposed to electronic media before they go to school, it actually alters the way their brainwave patterns work for that day of learning. And it sets your brain up so that you're not going to be ready for usually maths is taught in your first session at primary school and then you do your literacy. And then in the afternoon you might watch something or use computers, but generally in the morning at most schools they're not tech focused, they're pen and paper because that's the basics of our learning. And I said to Daron, look, I've been doing a little bit of reading and there's been some news articles appearing and what they're suggesting is that TV for kids before school is actually stopping them from learning. It's impacting their behaviour. They become very unreasonable and you can't negotiate with them. It's just they're going to have a meltdown. Daron says, OK, we'll try it. I think it was 2 weeks, the agreement. Yep. The TV has never come on in the morning in our house ever again. The difference in Andrew within 48 hours was phenomenal. Yep. Just amazing.
He behaved better, he didn't flip out, he got organised, got himself organised at school, his academics went up, all of those.
Yep. So it's for most children, and we were incredibly persistent with it, and it was just... That was the rule and that was great. And so I think that it's worthwhile. I know other families who've tried the same thing and they've said that it's made their mornings easier, but their children are actually focusing and learning better at school when there's nothing electronic before school.
And that now extends to phones and to iPads and to all sorts of things.
Yeah, so it's not just when he was little, it was just TVs because we're talking about 2005 and 6. Yeah. So, quite a while back. He was 10 in 2006.
Yeah. Okay, I think on that note, it's time for a break, if I'm correct. Yep, right on. So, 10-minute break. I think there's some nibblies, and also we're going to have some brochures and some information you can pick up as well on the different topics. 10-minute break, we'll be back for our second session where we'll continue our teenage brain, and then we'll move into what to do as parents. Thank you. out of here on time as promised. Let's watch our time. So we want to be 45 minutes again. 10 past, yep.
10 past, yep, okay.
Yep, okay. So let's continue our journey into the teenage brain and why it's so vulnerable. Another chemical or neurotransmitter that is involved in our brains is melatonin, and that regulates the sleep-wake cycle. We're talking about Andrew outside, and melatonin is something that some people just don't have, or low doses of. But interesting, when the teenage brain goes through puberty, melatonin release decreases. That's why our kids that were sleeping suddenly stop sleeping, or they don't go to sleep till late at night and then don't wake up till late in the morning, or you can't get them out of bed.
Now, we just need to say here that medication is a very, very individual thing. It's dependent on your situation, your child's situation, or your child's situation. It depends on the range of medications available, and it is never a one scenario suits every child. Some children or some individuals will actually have the opposite reaction. So for some people, and this includes me by the way, melatonin does not help you sleep, it actually wakes you up. So you can't just say, I'm going to get my kid medicated, my child medicated, because medication should always be done with a proper medical professional.
Talk to your paediatrician.
Go to your GP. They then send you to a paediatrician. It becomes a whole long-term conversation. It's not just this is an issue, I need medication.
And I'll add to that, all we talk about today is what Lisa and I have experienced in our parenting, also in my reading and research. I'm not a medical professional. If you are worried about your son or your daughter, please seek advice from your health professionals. The doctors these days are very good at healthcare plans and making sure they refer you to the right people. And talk to your professionals and
if you're not happy with a particular GP or a particular set of advice and you're still concerned, in Australia, get a second opinion.
Yeah. And the other thing was even getting our child diagnosed. As parents, you've got to be a warrior to make that happen and to move to the right people to get the diagnoses that you know as a parent you need to get them. Sometimes you need to go to the second and third person to make sure you get the right diagnosis you need for your child.
So if you think there is a problem, do not be scared to say to your primary healthcare provider, which in Australia is your GP, your general practitioner, to say, I am really concerned, please give me a referral to, or I need a mental health care plan for my child because that helps to cover the cost of a psychologist. And in Australia we have the right to ask, and in most cases they will give us the referral. In fact, they should be. If they're not giving you the referral that you know you need, go and get someone else to give it.
Yeah, but back to our teenage brain, when melatonin decreases during the teenage years, you add in social media use, gaming and the screens, and you see why we have a parenting storm in the making when it comes to getting our children their 6 to 8 hours sleep, probably more like 8 hours sleep they need per night. And so that's where we have a parenting issue. And then we get to dopamine, which is a feel-good chemical, dopamine is not that bad. It's not a bad chemical. It makes us want things like food and drink, through to talking to people in social acceptance. Dopamine does all that. They tried removing the dopamine stimulator from rats, and the rats just stopped eating. And they didn't want to do anything, and they just didn't want to do anything at all. So dopamine is a good chemical. It motivates us to get up in the morning and do things. Dopamine also fires in response to when we are in danger, to make us get out of danger and run, and all those things kick in. So
our big issue here is that when our normal dopamine feedback system is interrupted by one particular thing.
Yeah. So if it's constant gaming and getting those rewards, it's that dopamine goes into a cycle where you want more and more and more. Or it's social media for girls in particular, where the likes and the tweets and the little love hearts and the feedback they get from people online, and yeah, all of that affects their dopamine and it gets out of kilter. Once we get a reward, that is, dopamine gives the reward, serotonin is released. During teenage years, dopamine levels are at their highest.
Should that be serotonin?
No, dopamine. Serotonin is, once we get the feel-good chemical dopamine, serotonin comes in and balances out the reward. But yeah, dopamine levels are at their highest. Serotonin is not so high, it's lower in the teenage years. Serotonin kicks in and makes us feel calm and relaxed, especially when we feel wanted, important and proud. All good things that teenagers want. Serotonin affects mood fluctuations, anxiety and impulse controls. Serotonin also plays a powerful role in our moral judgment, decision making and moral behaviour. Here's the problem. While dopamine's at its highest, there's a temporary decline in serotonin during the teenage years, which creates a parenting storm when it comes to our kids being online for 6, 7, 8 or more hours per day if we let them.
So in other words, the serotonin helps to act as a protective
Makes you
factor.
feel satisfied. Yeah.
And so when the serotonin is low, our children don't have something that kicks in and say, hey, this is risky behaviour, and then we're endangering either our physical or our mental well-being.
Yeah. And then we have oxytocin, which is reward for bonding with others, stimulates the release of dopamine and serotonin. In addition to dopamine, oxytocin facilitates bonding and makes social connections more rewarding. All good things. With both dopamine and oxytocin engaged, it is no wonder that adolescents seek peers and excitement in their lives that could end up actually harming them. And that's why insurance companies say, you're going to pay a higher premium until your child reaches the age of 25 when all of this gets sorted. Another neurotransmitter is called GABA. Gamma aminobutyric acid is the way that's well. I don't got that quite right. Can you try?
Gamma aminobutyric acid.
Yeah. It's the inhibitor or braking system in the brain. Now, it's like for us, if we're online and playing a game, we might play it for an hour. Oh, well, we've played for enough now. Turn it off and go and do something else. That's what you normally would do. It also calms anxiety and impulsivity, regulates the ups and downs. We're more prone to developing addictive tendencies than at any other time in their lives because of this GABA. In other words, the braking system intentionally comes off in the teenage brain to allow it to grow into the adult brain. There are no brakes. They will play online for 7, 8, 9, 10 hours if we let them not even realise they've been online that long because they don't have the braking system to say get offline and go do something else. So that's why we as parents need to lean in during the teenage years and be the braking system. Get them off their screens and outdoors preferably.
So Daron, you and your brother-in-laws, you have a gaming session once or twice a year.
Normally in holidays at end of school terms or Christmas time, Easter time.
I'll be more specific. It's Christmas night and Boxing Day. And I think that it's really good because it's intergenerational. So Dad doesn't play, but Daron and my brothers do. My son does, and now some of my nephews are as well. But what I love is that the adult men who've played this when they were teenagers, they are actually demonstrating to their kids, we can have fun, but now we're stopping.
Yeah.
And so it's very regulated, it's very determined, and then they get out and they'll go water skiing or they'll play cricket.
Yeah.
So, or they'll get into the pool. So there's something that's happening, that they're being taught.
It's one part.
That this is just a small component of our life, and it's okay in a small part, but we need to actually take charge of it. And now we're going to go and do some other really great feel-good stuff that keeps us physically well.
Yeah. And what it says there is addictive pathways set during this time in the teenage years are very hard to break. Which brings us to the final one, I think it is, delta phos-B, a sustained molecular switch for addiction. And it is a regulatory protein that affects plasticity of our brain. Once switched on, it remains for a while and doesn't easily go away. In other words, I say to parents, get kids 1 hour online and then get them offline for at least 2 hours, and preferably outdoors in the bright sun if you can in the morning. It's preferable.
The long term of this is that addictions picked up in teenage years can persist for the rest of your life. So it's things like smoking, drug addiction, all of those types of things. You really don't want gaming, you don't want kids to pick it up during their teenage years, because then it impacts on the productivity and the development of them into healthy adults. Some habits, they prevent you from learning and then reaching your full potential.
Yeah, that's right. But back to Jonathan Haidt. After more than a decade of stability and improvement, he says, in the mental health of adolescents in many countries around the world, deteriorated suddenly in the year, he picked the very year, 2010. What happened in 2010?
Wasn't an iPhone released?
Well, the smartphone became not just a smartphone, but it became also a front-facing camera. The word selfie gets invented. Nothing wrong with selfies, but
they're the best photos.
They are. Lisa likes getting a selfie of all our family events, and they're quite fun to watch.
And I did it because there was often no one around to take a photo of me with the family, and I was taking the photos. And then I was reading that mums were discovering they didn't have photos of their kids growing up. At that point in time, I went, yep, you're not taking a photo. I'm not standing there and taking a photo of Daron with the kids, because then rarely a photo got taken of me. I said, no, we're taking one photo and it's going to be a selfie because I'm part of this family. So that's what happened. And I think for mums, it's really important that we do it. This is off track, because otherwise our role in our children's lives is minimised. We are part of the family, and we're often the ones who keep everything together while Dad's really busy doing what he does. So sorry, I've hijacked your...
No, that's all right. A very good commercial break for selfies, family selfies with mum in the picture. Now it's Father's Day tomorrow, but it's all good. We'll do a selfie probably tomorrow at some point. But yeah, 2010 was when smartphones became freely available, not just for us, but for our children as well. Jonathan Haidt says you can look at the dates there, 2010, and suddenly things go AWOL. Major depression for our girls, 145% increase since 2010. Boys, not so much, but as Lisa said earlier, boys retreat to their bedrooms. They don't exhibit the symptoms, but they still have the symptoms.
It was worse for boys.
Yeah, but it has increased, but not quite as much as girls, but yeah. Then anxiety has just skyrocketed again. You see the years 2010, 2012, suddenly it goes off the scale for our 18 to 25-year-old children, 139% increase since 2010. And what he said was you can do these graphs for every single country in the Western world, exactly the same year, exactly the same results. And people say, well, Jonathan Haidt, there's no proof of this. There's correlation, it's not causation. And he says, it's true. But you show me what else happened that has caused this to occur. Did someone spray a chemical in the water in all Western countries? Or has something else gone wrong?
It also coincides with a lot of the social media platforms beginning as well.
Yeah, correct. Instagram and Snapchat and
Facebook,
all of those.
Snapchat was a bit later.
Yeah, MySpace was the first one. I think I've still got a MySpace account somewhere.
They closed them.
Yes. Meet up with friends daily. Again, catching up with your friends face to face. We were just talking in the break about the art of conversation. And Sherry Turkle wrote a book about conversation now, I think it was about 10, maybe even close to 20 years ago. She's just updated that book coming out very soon, where she talks about the fact that conversation, the idea of the art of being able to talk to a person face to face, look them in the eye, smile and read the cues, is getting lost because kids don't meet up face to face anymore. It's all virtual. So Jonathan Haidt says this has dropped off significantly since the year 2010. Teens who get less than 7 hours sleep. Again, you can see there going off the scale for both boys and girls since the year 2010. Depression by level of social media use. After 1 hour online, you can see for girls it goes off the scale and for boys as well. That's why we suggest 1 hour online should be your tech rule, 2 hours offline, preferably outdoors, which allows the brain to reset and some of these addictive tendencies to reset and not kick in as well. Satisfied with oneself. Again, 2010, suddenly boys and girls are not satisfied with themselves anymore or finding meaning in life. Again, you can see there it's shot up for girls more than boys, but kids don't find meaning in life anymore. And Jonathan Haidt says all these things have happened since around the year 2010 to 2012. What he says, which really hit me, the phone-based life produces spiritual degradation, not just in children, but in all of us. Jonathan Gillespie, what's his name, the lawyer? David? He said if he had his way, he would throw the iPhone and the iPad in the bin. But he says we can't do that. Mobile phones, digital media is the currency that kids use to connect. So what we need to look at is variety, balance and moderation. And Gillespie says that parents need to harden up and parent not just in all the other spaces, but especially in the digital space as well. And rules are rules we talk about in the third session and need to be adhered to by everyone. This is the other quote which I like. He said, there's a God-shaped hole in every human heart. If it doesn't get filled with something noble and elevated, modern society will quickly pump it full of garbage. It speaks into where we are as an Adventist church as well and what it means to have God in our lives. So, what is the answer here? Haidt suggests 4 cultural norms which need to be put in place to reclaim childhood back again. Number 1, no smartphones before high school. Parents should delay children's entry into round-the-clock internet access by giving only basic phones. Phones with limited apps and no internet browser before 9th grade, year 8 to 9 in Australia.
And I'd actually argue with that. If you can delay it till year 11, I'd do so. Yep, one child did not get one till they were 17 and a bit because they weren't as reliable. The other one got one in year 8. That was done very reluctantly, but they were having to train travel to meet Daron on a regular basis, and they also used their phone way less. They were much better at keeping it in their bag at school. Laptops, our oldest actually...
Needed one.
Yeah, There's something called dyspraxia and dysgraphia, and when you have that, you actually really need to use a computer because your handwriting is illegible for your teachers. And so we had lots and lots of rules around about that. Homework had to be done by about 9-ish. Laptop came to us in the evening. But yes, that came with a whole lot of technology training that we had to do to make sure that the child was safe.
And the laptop was a tool, not a rule.
Yes, it was a tool and it was not for everything else. Our other child got a laptop in year 7, but only handwrite up until the end of year 9 when I had their teacher from every single subject bail me up because I taught at the same school and said, we can't read your child's writing. And so from that point on, they had to use the laptop even through their HSC exams. But again, we had rules. They were not in the bedrooms overnight. They came to us, and as they got older, we'd lengthen it out. But I got very good at checking during the night.
So a couple of keys here is hold off as long as you can.
Hold off as long as you can.
And number 2, when they do get a smartphone, put in place a tech agreement and let them decide what the punishments are. So the kids decided that if they broke the tech agreement, which was they had the phone in the bedroom or the bathroom or whatever, then they decided that they'll lose their devices for 24 hours. It worked with Andrew well, not so well with Madison.
I'm not using their names. So yes, one child it did not work with. They would cheerfully go and get you their devices and go, here you are. And that was that. The other one, it was like death. And so that was a very good thing. It's like, well, these are the rules. The child who'd hand them over was probably the child who didn't really break them anyway.
Yeah.
But, you know, I admit we use them as a behaviour management thing.
And what the research is saying works really well is if it's not just you talk about it, but you actually write it out, you sign the agreement, it's placed on the fridge, it's a rule that everyone sees and everyone lives by.
We didn't do that. In hindsight, we probably should have. But we did talk about it constantly because as a teacher, I knew what was happening in the classrooms. And
the device often went in the car with me to work. As punishment, they went with me.
Oh, yes, because our children would get home about 45, 50 minutes before me. And so when they got home, there were no devices at home. They'd gone to work with Daron. And so they really didn't get them. And then they got them back when they were able to sit down and have a rational, calm conversation with us about why they'd lost the tech and what they were going to do to get it back. We had to hand it back a few times, didn't we? Because...
I tried to show grace as well.
Well, we did show grace, but then they were doing things like, I need my laptop back because I've got to do all the PowerPoints for church, and unfortunately that was the truth. But as a family, we did a lot of talking about it. They also knew that when a punishment was over, or a consequence, because what had happened was linked directly to their behaviour. If you do this, then this is going to be the consequence, and until you change this, then you're not getting it back. Until you can prove to me that you are worthy of having it back, you're not going to get it. And I will admit that I did probably about 95% of the negotiations because in that stage of our life, Daron was often away from Friday lunchtime till midnight Saturday night with his job because he was travelling in northern New South Wales. So I did a lot of it. I'm really good at nagging and I'm really good at discussing things. And I can be really rational about it and I can have this conversation about something you don't like in this tone of voice. So you can't even get mad at me because I'm not yelling. But drip, 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 drip. And because it was in the forefront of what we were doing, the kids became quite responsible for their own behaviour really quickly. It's like, yeah, you lost it, what did you do? Is that my problem? No. And yes, I could yell and yes, I did bellow, but it didn't happen very often.
Number 2, and this one Australia's already in front of the world, no social media before the age of 16. Let kids get through the most vulnerable period of brain development and get through most of puberty before connecting them to a fire hose of social comparison and algorithmically chosen influences.
We can't talk on this one because our kids did have social media earlier. They had cousins in the UK and they used it to talk free because we didn't have other things back then to their cousins. In hindsight, we really only had to deal with Facebook to later high school when they got Snapchat. But realistically, this is one that I would hard stick to now.
And because of what's on there now,
the
influences and the garbage that's now, rabbit holes that our kids go down. You don't understand what I'm saying? Try setting a profile as a 13-year-old boy and see what gets thrown at them very quickly by the influences that want to get to them. All the same as a girl. And what happens is that, for my phone, I get lots of chook pictures. She gets lots of craft, sewing, patchwork, wool,
and
teaching resources.
I block it. I have men sending me unsolicited messages to my messages, and it's gross. And I don't even look, I just block them. And that's just because of my age.
But imagine with kids who are vulnerable and don't understand, well, this is not real, or this is someone trying to take advantage of me, don't have the braking system or the thinking, they're vulnerable. So keeping them off social media again is beneficial to them, and the government's going to bring it in at the end of the year anyway here. So we've just written a resource for you which is not printed because we didn't quite get off the press, but it is on the app, which is how to prepare your child for the social media bans that are about to come in. So if you log in, and the QR codes are over here, I've got little cards here at the end of the session for you, to load the app, and you'll find just for you, hot off the press, just for this church, and then go rest of the world after that, how to manage your lead up. It's now September. You're going to get to December when it's apparently going to kick in. We need to prepare our kids for it now, and that gives you tips on how to do that. Number 3, Lisa?
Oh, phone-free schools. Phone-free schools are amazing. Our kids are talking to each other. Our kids are not misbehaving as much as they used to. Swearing in the playground has really, really reduced. The school I work at is a positive behaviour for learning school. So respect, responsibility, and I've lost the third R because I do that with my brain. We have green zones.
Not resilience?
No, it's not resilience. Respect, right time, right place.
Yep.
So in Australia, what's here is American, but in Australia, all schools are phone free. Your phones are either in the office, they're in lockers, they're in magnetic pouches, or they're in your bag, and if we see you with your phone, we send you automatically to the office, and a parent has to come and collect your phone. My school's one of the last ones, and it works reasonably well, probably about 95% of the time. We've got a few students, and this is where it makes it a bit difficult, but we have to do it, and it's a really good thing we do. We've got a number of students with diabetes, and their glucose monitors connect to their phone. So we have exemptions for those, and we know who those kids are. We've got a couple of other kids with sensory issues, and they're allowed headphones that aren't connected because it dulls the noise. So we've got exceptions around it to look after our students. All schools are like my school because we all work from the same set of rules.
And what it means is the kids have 6 hours where they're off their phones.
A lot of students say to us, well, we're not going to take our phone out, or actually we've left our phone at home so we're not tempted. Or I'm not using it, I live close by, I don't need my phone on public transport home. The kids are happier. We can teach better in class. I am not having stressed out students yelling at me because I've confiscated a phone or a deputy hasn't come to get them. So our workload around that has reduced. It has been the most wonderful thing that has happened to schools in Australia ever.
And the rest of the world is now trying to catch up.
Yeah, so phone-free schools is a really good thing. I know some students still complain about it, but they are learning better. They're engaging more with writing tasks. The other thing is our students, because my school has 20 minutes every morning for house check-in. That is where we do uniform being a public school, we actually do have a uniform and we're quite strict on it, but we have lots of variations within that uniform to allow for different needs. So, there's pants, there's skirts, there's the whole works, but providing you've got items from that list, you're okay. We check in on kids, but what we do is we actually have discussions with them. And so the group of students I am with, I will be with them the entire way. We also have a mix, so we've got Year 7 to Year 12 all in the one group. Our kids are talking and having conversations with us about big life issues now that they were not having while they were allowed to sit in house check-in with their phones, or more to the point, even if they were told to put their phones away, they refused. So for their mental well-being, it's made a massive improvement in an incredibly short period of time. Oh, and fights in the playground have really reduced.
So there you go. That's first-hand experience of what's happening in our school grounds from phone-free schools. Number 4, and it's one thing we have to do collectively, far more unsupervised play and childhood independence. You said that the way children naturally develop social skills and overcome anxiety and become self-governing young adults is independent, free play.
Okay, I actually cheated with this one. Our kids thought that they had lots and lots of unsupervised time because I knew they needed it, but I also knew that they didn't have the ability to think to keep themselves safe. So they could not problem solve to the degree that I wanted them to. So what would happen is you would go somewhere in a park and you'd let them run free, but realistically you could keep a bit of an eye on them to make sure that they're okay. So we're creating the opportunity for them to be unsupervised while they are developing the actual ability to manage to keep themselves safe. And I think that's important.
And also the fact that there's different age kids there as well is helpful as well, Hate says. And Hate says exactly what you said, is that the way we're going to do this is to go to a park, find some great parks and go collectively, let the kids run wild, the parents do a picnic, which what we saw happening over in the UK very, very much so, is that they're already ahead on this one with...
Kensington Palace Park, we spent quite a bit of time there while we were in the UK. We had a couple of nights in Notting Hill. Andrew booked the travel and I didn't realise it was there. But in Kensington Park Palace Gardens, they have branches, they've got long grass, they've got logs, and they actually encourage the kids to build cubbies. And they call them dens in the UK. They have mud kitchens for mud play. They have the big, massive Princess Diana Memorial Park, which is the kids' park, where everything is...
A big old wooden ship.
Yeah, it's sensory, but the kids feel like they're being completely adventurous, but it's challenging them... I've lost the word I want. They're actually pushing their sensory skills. So it's sensory play. And it also encourages cooperative and collaborative play. Very, very impressed. I wish Australia had a lot more of them.
And the adults, we noticed, were sitting in groups, even on a weeknight, having a picnic in the evening, enjoying the evening while the kids played. And we noticed no phones in kids' hands because they were playing and enjoying life. So that's something that we still need to work on here in Australia, in the idea of getting kids outdoors in the park, free play.
The other thing is Pathfinders. And our kids went through a Department of Education school, so in other words, state school, but they were in Pathfinders from friends right through to their master guide. And that gave them lots and lots of challenges with adults to mentor them. So I taught some classes, Daron went on a few camps, but that for us, that gave our children time without mum and dad hanging over their shoulders to develop who they were.
Yeah. So Pathfinders and Adventurers are probably the most underrated, best Adventist groups for all of the things we're talking about. They're often off-grid, away from phone reception. They're hiking. They're outdoors. There's different age kids there. They're not on social media because they can't get on social media. So all those things that we talk about are happening in Pathfinders.
So we had one child who tumbled headfirst into it. We had one child who was way more reluctant.
Had to negotiate.
We negotiated, and the rule was that I've given it away there. They were not allowed to quit Pathfinders till they'd finished Master Guide. And at the end
And I
of
went
it,
with them.
Yep. At the end of the time, what both kids said is that they were really glad they stuck it out because it gave them a sense of achievement that they had never, ever accomplished anywhere else. And they achieved lots of other things. It was long term. It taught them commitment. It taught them responsibility. It taught them to care about others. They mentored other groups. So it was just an amazing, in addition to the Christian and religious part of it, which to me is very important, it was the social skills and their social development that they got from it that was important. It also gave them a massive sense of belonging and that they were contributing positively to the world around them. So I would recommend that. Just about killed us as far as scheduling at times, but it was well and truly worth the chaos it caused.
Yeah. So let's run through quickly and close the session out 12 ways to parent in the digital age. These are ones that I think work.
You can skip lots.
Christy Goodwin, no, we'll don't jump that. That's in your handout. We're going to, she talked about the idea of putting guardrails in place and what they look like, which is what I'll talk about shortly. So we'll go to number 1. Where are we? Just going to skip forward here to this. And now I've got to go back. Remember, number 1, that you are the parent, especially in the digital space. Know what your child is up to.
So, very quickly, you have your children's passwords.
Yep.
If you cannot log into their phone and check all their accounts, or if they've changed a password, they lose the device.
They lose the privilege.
They lose the privilege.
And we had our kids' passwords right up until they were 15, 16?
No, right up till they hit 20-ish. We didn't look at their phones by that age.
But we could.
But our kids trusted us.
Yeah. So the idea is guardrails to teach them how to be responsible. And my kids knew that I would log in and see what conversations they were having. I could see where they'd been. I could see what was on their Facebook and check their messenger chats as well.
And we didn't comment very much, but we were friends with them and because they knew we could randomly check, they didn't hide us from some conversations. They knew that whatever they did online, their parents were going to see. If we couldn't do that...
They went online.
Yep.
So that's one of our negotiations when they did go online was all around that. Number 2, decide together when your child needs a phone and separately when they need a smartphone. The good old Nokia is around still. It's experienced a comeback as both adults and teenagers want to get offline and get away from all the mess of social media. And so the simple smartphone for doing phone calls and basic messaging is out there and available. So decide when they need that phone, and number 2, when they need a smartphone. Number 3, aim for reasonable use. Come up with a tech agreement together. Decide when it's going to be on, when it's going to be off, where it's going to be kept, where no-go zones are, bedrooms, bathrooms, mealtimes, etc. What games they're going to play, but also, importantly, what are the punishments for not adhering by that agreement together.
Now, I know you said bedrooms, Darren, but once kids get homework, and I mean genuine homework, year 7 and 8, most homework can be accomplished on the dining room table.
Yep.
Or on the kitchen bench with mum or dad around, whoever. 9, 10, 11, 12, well, certainly 9 and 10, they're needing to do more and more research, and it's really good that they're learning the habit to study at a desk. Some families have houses that are big enough that there is a designated study area in the house. Others, it needs to be a bedroom. But of course, you know your children and you can work with that. Year 11 and 12, realistically, they are going to need to be working in their bedrooms because it's almost as difficult as uni work, and you need that space and the time for research, particularly for students who are doing things like community and family studies where they've got massive research
But I should
programs.
add to that, in the years leading up to 11, 12, we've had the conversation we've had the agreements, they've begun to learn responsible usage. And what Justin Colson says in his work was that if we do that well and teach them how to self-manage, by the time they get to 11 and 12, they're very good at doing it 99% of the time.
And that's what I was going to say, because we knew our children, because we'd had those conversations, we were able to do that. One child preferred to work in the bedroom, the other one preferred to work on the lounge. But they also had times where we would say, hey, it's 11:30, we know you're working on your assignment, your brain is done, let's pack it up, go to sleep, you'll do better off getting up in the morning and
Which brings us to the next one, set tech-free zones and times. Bedtimes, meal times, car travel, etc.
Car travel, I think, is not too... You can pick and choose it for car travel.
Yeah.
You've got to survive.
Sometimes it helps get through the trip, but know what they're watching and what they're doing and what they're playing, whatever they're doing in that time as well. Number 5, as I said earlier, because of the brain and the way addiction sets in, 1 hour on, 2 hours off rule. Or it might be 3 hours on, okay, 5, 6 hours, whatever it is, but allow in your tech agreement what time they're going to be on, then how many hours off, and in that off time set jobs to be done. The dishwasher needs packing or unpacking, wood needs chopping, animals need feeding at our house, whatever it is. If you get them outdoors to do it, even better, but have some jobs that they can do. A whole lot of research around the power of just doing jobs to contribute to the house and how it helps their personal self-esteem.
And, I mean, as I said, we didn't have a written agreement, but we had been talking around tech for years before our kids got technology. So even if your kids don't have lots of technology, you can start talking to them about it at 2 and 3. This is our tech time. This isn't tech time. And I know my 2-year-old grandson...
Brings you to 6.
Oh, help your child balance online with offline activities. Luca definitely knows when it's tech time and when it's not tech time.
He's only 2.
He's only 2, but...
He says away, 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 and he basically says away, away, away.
So that means that, so he's got an understanding at 2. It's okay to start talking when they're young. That makes it much easier when they're older.
So he's already having the tech balance discussion, and he now is already starting to self-regulate and knows when he's had enough, which is interesting. Number 7, purchase the best technology. You can buy a mainframe and put it in the central place in the house, along with a docking station lockbox for all devices. Kids gravitate to the best phone, to the best mainframe, to the best iPad. So buy the best, that is Dad's, and that is the one that is in the main part of the house where they'll gravitate to.
I think this is where we vary slightly. I like the portability of laptops. So, if you go somewhere and kids need to do work, you've got a laptop. But again, do invest in really good quality computers. And I probably shouldn't be saying it, but an Apple Mac PC like an Apple Air, they'll last 7+ years. So they'll go... Madison's pretty much went the whole way through high school. Andrew's went through 10, 11, the end of year 10, 11, 12 and the whole way through uni. And the thing is, the kids, by having a quality computer and you discussing the cost, even if they contribute to the cost of it from doing jobs, they will value it more if they've actually had to put some effort into obtaining the device. And so my kids, Daron and I paid for it, but they had to do things around the house that earned them credit towards the computer. So it was, you have to feed the chooks every time Dad's away and you have to lock them up so the fox doesn't eat them. And I know that sounds funny, but that's literally what we did.
Yeah.
So it was the responsibility. We talked about the cost of it.
Yep.
We looked at everything around what it was involved with that piece of technology. So it just wasn't, here is a $2,000 object that they then don't value. Andrew still has his original Apple one. I will admit, I won't name the brand, we had a couple of PCs before then. and they just fell to bits and they were awful pieces of technology. We're going back a few years. So we looked at a computer that was going to last and be reliable, and we never had any issues with it. We also had the good tech backup. But that was a family choice that the kids knew how much, they knew the dollar value, but they also knew how much work that equated for us as a family. And I've never seen kids care for devices so well as what our two did.
Number 8, model the behaviour you want to see in your children around tech usage. This is where we as adults need to put our phones down sometimes so our kids put theirs down. So model what that looks like at meal times or other times when you want tech to be turned off or put away. Yours goes down and away as well.
We've gotten good at doing that over the years. We've learnt.
Yes, very much so. Number 9, keep the end goals in mind when it comes to our kids. Focus on the big issues: sleep, exercise, diet, good routines, what I want in my children, including and excluding tech. That's part of the balance, variety and moderation that I was talking about. But I say, okay, you're online now. We're going to talk about when you're going to get outside and do some exercise, at least 1 or 2 hours. When's that going to happen? We have that conversation.
One thing we did learn, and this is what I had to learn as a teacher, is we gave our kids take-up time. So that was a warning. Okay, you've been online for X amount of time. In 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it's going away. 5 minutes later, you have 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You have 5 minutes. That reduced temper tantrums.
Intention.
And intention, yeah. So the kids were able to regulate and say, I am going to have to put this away. Therefore, they were more likely to cooperate, and it was healthier for them because they were learning to self-regulate. Not perfect, and as I said, we learnt the hard way.
And this one where we talked about a little bit, set clear boundaries and consequences around technology. Other words, a tech agreement. When they get the phone, you're paying for it normally. So, yeah, I think...
I was so sad when Madison started to earn money and finished her degree.
What's that?
It meant that I no longer paid for a phone, which meant I had to feed your chooks.
Yes. And our kids left home, unfortunately, although I've reduced my chooks now, so, yeah.
It was literally, her phone had died. Okay, you have X amount of years left. Mum will get it.
This is what you do.
But this is what the payment for it is going to be. I think I got off with the better end of it than she did.
But it got her outdoors, it got her doing chores, it got her off screen. So the negotiations helped achieve those aims that we wanted.
We should admit that she did do 2 years of her nursing degree online due to COVID.
Yeah, that's right as well. Number 11, help your child develop a healthy media diet. What is junk food? Teach them what junk food is in the idea of what is junk media. What is helpful media? When are you consuming? When are you creating? So help them to create and also know what truth is, which is becoming more and more hard to find in today. And knowing when someone's trying to con you, we need to parent in that space, have those conversations and teach the kids how to live in the digital world as well.
We did a lot of this in the car because my kids went to my school that I taught at for high school. So we'd talk about it going to school and we'd talk about it coming home. We also, even if we didn't eat at the dining table, we all ate together at the same time and we would discuss all the media that we had been exposed to during the day. So we were a big ideas family.
Sometimes it was at 11 o'clock at night or even later.
Yes, but in general, we would talk about what they'd been exposed to during the day at tea. And so it just became normal. We'd have the conversation. So phones might have come out, but look at what I saw. Oh, is this true? So who's going to check it? So there was a lot of research, and I think through that, that's how our kids became really savvy media users, because we didn't just let it go. We actually drew it into we had family forums about it. I think it's the best way to discuss it.
And research says if parents have discussion with their children around harmful things they come across, it actually reduces the long-term damage and effect of those things on them just by having that conversation. And I think that brings us to the next break. So we're it's not going to be a break, it's more going to be if you need to have a break and go to the bathroom break. But we're going to start answering questions during this break. If you have questions you've written down, hand them up, and we're going to answer some questions and move into our final presentation after that. Need some water? So, I do, yep. Well, you want to start answering the question, and I'm going to give you a hard one.
Okay.
Here is one that's interesting. So, we've got children, and what if we disagree on when our kids should use the phones, be online? You know what I mean? One says it's okay, one says it's not okay. How are we going to handle that?
That's when you have a child-free sabbatical and you go to a cafe or you sit in your lounge room and you nut it out till both parents are on the same page. You do your research, you have your evidence, and it is absolutely crucial that both parents are on the same page or very close to it. Get your procedures right, because the kids will figure out who is the easiest person and they will go for them. Our 2-year-old grandson, do you know who his first person is that he goes to? Do you know why that is? Because he is the big, beautiful softie. Then he goes to Mama, who is Michaela's mum next. Then he goes to Michaela's dad, who's granddad. And then he comes to me, who's Lily. Because Neil and I are the toughest too. Doesn't mean we don't love Luca, but it means that we're the ones who are likely to say, oh, you've already had some apple juice. Let's check with Mum and Dad before we give you more apple juice. So he's figured out who are the weakest links are when it comes to getting his own way. And
what you're saying is that kids, if they see an entering wedge, will play the parents off against each other?
That's what I'm saying. They will play each other off against you beautifully. Make sure that you're on the same page. And if you don't think you're on the same page, you go, well, I'm not saying anything or I'm not agreeing to anything till I've talked to your father, because I need to know what they've told you first.
Yeah.
Because they'll pretend that Mum or Dad has said something and, yeah, Mum hasn't said that at all, or Dad hasn't said that at all.
But when it comes to tech and your kids, if need be, do the research, listen to some Jonathan Haidt podcasts together, discuss them, and come to an agreement, not in front of the kids, but you need to be on the same page before it comes. Because this is where, for example, the turning TV off in the morning for our son, we had that conversation away from our son and decided on a strategy that we both agreed to and enforced in front of our son.
And I did say this earlier, but we also had conversations with Andrew before we actually made the change.
Yeah.
So one thing you probably need to do if your kids are a bit older is, if you know that you're going to have to make some really tough changes, give them 6 or 8 weeks to get used to the idea of what is coming. Talk about it, show them the research, because kids are smart, and then, countdown. Okay, we've got a week till this starts. Here's our spot that the tech's going, so that when it changes, it's not just, and then they've got the change, they're all upset, they're all dysregulated. It's really important. I am going to say something which is a tad triggering. I'm just giving you a warning. When it comes to gaming, there are often children who can play for 24 hours plus. When that happens, their brain is in another world. It is not functioning. They cannot regulate themselves. They also can make really poor decisions if that tech is taken away from them quite.
So you can't do it.
Hang on.
This is our question, by the way.
Is it?
If my child is already addicted to electronic devices, what should I do? How do I help her?
Okay.
Or him. Yep.
So some students or children have committed suicide when they have had tech removed from them.
So you can't just do it?
You can't just do it like that. I know that sounds really weird and in odds with what we have said, but that's where you start talking about it. If for some reason you do need to take tech away from a child and they're very upset, don't leave them on their own. And you may actually need to seek medical support to get them settled down. But
Yeah, and that's a good one, is an addiction is an addiction.
It is a mental health problem,
The
and
same
you
as
need to
being
seek
addicted
support.
to alcohol, drugs, tobacco, anything else, it is an addiction. So you'll need a mental health care plan probably.
Before you remove any technology. That's for a very, very severe case.
If it's a more milder case, then it's where you as a parent help the situation. So you might say, we're going to go for a walk, or we're going to find a hobby that's going to be something that your daughter or your son likes and you like and you do together, which you've got to slowly wean and distract.
School counsellors are really good at helping with tech addictions. They often know or can refer to specialised organisations. I'm not certain if Sydney has Headspace, but Headspace as an organisation is brilliant with helping around tech addictions. And there are also psychologists where you go to your GP, they'll give you a mental health care plan and you can get into them. GPs are good, but there are now actually specialised counsellors to do with tech addiction. So, but again, if your child is addicted and it's a mild addiction, start talking about it, work with them. So it's an agreed upon plan that you're going to have. It's not just, oh my goodness, your tech is gone.
You
and
say,
it's like,
we're going to go for an hour tonight where there's going to be no phone, prepare them for it. The phone or whatever the device is, you have something else you can do, like play a board game together, or go for a walk together, or go to the beach, whatever you like to do in that time, to fill it with something else, and you slowly extend it.
Yep. So we did lots and lots of jigsaws. You can get wasgidgets. They're hilarious. You've got to just check to make sure they're appropriate. But the picture on the box is different than what is made. They're 1,000-piece ones. They take up about this by this. But that is an awesome place to sit and to talk and to chat. And kids who are tech addicted will get into the jigsaws. And so that's one thing. We would sew, taught my kids to crochet. Andrew can take up his wife's pant legs because he can sew. They know how to quilt.
Family board
Both can
games.
cook. Board games. I'm not a board game player, but the rest of them are.
There's some really good... And board games is different to addictive gaming online, because with board games there's often the family involved. There's so much benefits around playing board games together as a family when it comes to connection and when it comes to getting kids offline. Kids will gravitate offline if you're doing something like jigsaw or a board game or something together as a family.
Yeah.
They'll want to be there.
So we did, as I said, our big thing was wasgidgets, because the kids loved solving the puzzle of what was in there that they couldn't actually see. So it's a bit unusual, but for board games, well, they're not actually board games, but games that you can get. There's one called Exploding Kittens, and you can get kids' versions. There's Throw the Burrito. What else have we got, Daron?
All of those.
There's shops everywhere.
Exploding Kittens.
Exploding Kittens. So invest in some of those, and we play them with Michaela, my daughter-in-law's family. So Michaela's mum and I and her uncle, we're at school together. So her mum was a year ahead of me at Avondale School. Her uncle was the year below me, so we've been friends for 40 years. But we actually get together as families and we play board games, and we're all talking, we're all chatting, there's very little tech. We don't do it very often, maybe every 8 to 10 weeks, but just enough that it's something else. Families who have board games have really awesome relationships and much better mental health.
And I notice when we play board games, all our phones, even not realising it, are face down in the middle of the table. We don't even look at them because you're so involved in the game.
Okay,
another one. When the phone device is the kids' method to feel socially accepted. So the phone is how they feel socially accepted. Yep. It is the social currency among their friends. How do I manage usage?
Oh, that's easy. Mum and Dad are to blame for everything. Give your kids permission to use you as an out. My kids knew that they could blame me for anything and everything, to the point that the kids who were their friends thought that I was a monster, and Madison then had to tell them I wasn't. But that's really good, because that means if the kids are worried they're going to get some blowback from their friends, Mum won't let me. That's an acceptable thing.
My parents are weird. We said use that. Tell the rest of my parents are weird, they won't let me. That's socially acceptable to say that to their peers. My parents won't let me.
That's really socially acceptable. The other thing is, is that you can have set periods of time, and friends are quite accepting. In fact, they're a bit jealous.
My mum and dad say I can be online talking to you from this time till this time.
Or I have family obligations, so I'm available here.
Yes, that's a good excuse.
In fact, our son has some mates. Most of his mates are Samoan, and they call our family FOB, which is fresh off the boat. Because when Nan, who's my stepmum, says we're doing something, the whole family turns up. And so what we also developed around our kids and our nieces and nephews, we've got 4 generations of people who are interconnected, and their friends knew that when there was going to be Friday night tea and opening Sabbath, you know, that wasn't there. So that's one way of managing it, is putting out there family obligations, therefore I'm not going to be on social media.
Okay, so we're discussing consequences and the child refuses to follow through with the consequences.
We might have misunderstood this. So the actual device. So this means the
device is a social currency.
They're not yet. So this is the actual thing. So it might be they've got like an Apple, and that's cooler than having a Samsung. Some kids...
No, when using the phone and having the phone is the way to be socially accepted. How do we manage the usage?
And the thing is, most days kids talk about phones as a social status symbol.
I think to some degree, having the latest Apple or the latest Samsung has actually decreased. It's not as big a social deal as what it used to be, because they're now banned at school. Yeah. So I know a lot of kids, and they quite openly say, I got a new phone, and they're like, what? Oh yeah, Dad got a new phone for work, so Mum's got the old one and I got Mum's old one. So there's now a lot of handing, not joking, that's the conversation I've heard. So a lot of kids now, there's not so much focus on what brand it is, it's the fact that they've actually got one. So there's 2 ways of viewing that question. Have we answered it?
If you want to get your child to a counsellor and they don't want to go, you know they need it, they just sort of feel weird about it. What do you do? There's
the odd kid who won't, but generally if you start talking about it for a long time about why, if you set it up and it's a way that their friends don't know about it, so it's after school, you might even need to keep it secret from the rest of the family, you've got a higher chance of getting them there. If you can find someone who could be the same gender, that often goes well, and if they're younger.
And what I also do is we would have a conversation with the school counsellor, say, here's the issue, the child doesn't want to seek you out, the counsellor will seek them out in the playground and start a conversation that way, and they're often pretty good at then setting up a regular meeting. So
sometimes
talk to your school.
Yeah. Sometimes you can set it up as like, I'm really worried, and yep, you might be okay, but can you just talk to them so that we know you're okay, and then Mum's going to stop worrying about you? I know one family where they basically had an intervention with their teenage son who was horrendously addicted to gaming and had spent a lot of money, had racked up a huge bill. And they got him to one, but it was after a family intervention. He didn't like it, but it did break the addiction.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think the other thing is if you normalise talking to someone, hey, I talk to a psychologist when I'm stressed, or I talk to a counsellor, they are more likely to be less objectionable. But guys, it is hard, and it's an every child one. So again, work with your doctor and that'll help you get the help.
Okay, last question, we move into the final session. And if you've got any other questions, feel free to contact me. My email comes up and we can talk that way as well. When discussing consequences, what would you do if a child refuses to follow the consequences, even if it was the child who agreed initially? And then how do you deal with the nagging behaviour from that? This is a hard one.
It's actually really, really tough, that one. Basically, you need to talk about it to the point that they will handle the phone over. If the phone is in your name, you can temporarily block it so that it can't be used. So you turn it into a brick temporarily. I know some...
Or you have programs where it turns off at a certain time.
Yep, it can be programmed so that it shuts off automatically and isn't available for use between certain hours. So that effectively turns it into a brick. Some families have removed Wi-Fi. We never did that. It was just too hard for us.
Because they often would know how to hack into the neighbours or whatever else.
Well, they didn't do that, but it's just we just figured that was creating too many other issues. But yes, I do know parents who take the modem
with them.
Our oldest is such a tech genius that we didn't set ourselves up for failure. We found other ways around it. So you've got to find consequences that mean the most. So one child, take the tech, and that was the end of the world and we had no problems. The other one didn't care, but did not like social isolation. So
and we discussed this in the last session as well, which is going to start shortly, but we'll still be able to be here by 4. We're going to keep the last one fairly short. But basically remember, you are the parent in the end.
Yeah, you are the parent. So we had to find a consequence for the younger one that worked, and that was social isolation. And so it was like, no, off you go. And so we found a method that dealt with each one. You know your child best, and if removing tech doesn't work, then you need to find something else.
But all the research says, we're going to come to boundaries now, putting boundaries in place and enforcing boundaries communicates security to your child.
Now, how to deal with nagging behaviour from it? You'd give in periodically. I do not give in to nagging.
Yep.
Sorry. Basically...
I was too soft. I was a bit of a softie.
And I'm like, what have you done?
I'd like to show grace.
No. We actually had to work on our parenting together a lot because we both come from incredibly different families. The style of parenting, discipline and everything is massively different. The fact that we've been married for 32 years is pretty amazing. But kids
still love each other.
We do. Kids will nag, and they actually know that when their nagging is at the greatest point, parents will usually give in. So they will get really worked up, and the most worked up they could possibly get, they'll extend that out. They think, oh, they're going to give it in. If you don't give in, they'll actually stop it.
Yep.
And after a little while and a few times of it, our kids knew that nagging wasn't going to work, but they also knew that we would discuss things very rationally with them. And, you know, if you've got someone who is addicted, if it takes you 3 to 6 months to get those behaviour changed, don't panic, take the time, because you have to start with the conversations. At a school where they've implemented, as I've said, this positive behaviour for learning program, it works really, really well when we focus on the positives and not so much on the negatives. We still have consequences, but we flip it so it's like, well, you have the consequence from what you did. It's not the teacher gave it to you, you gave your consequence yourself. The planning in schools that this is implemented takes 12 to 18 months before they start the program. So if you are wanting to change how you are parenting, start it slowly and do it over a 6 month. There might be a whole lot of pile of smaller things that you want to start on first, and then you get to the big one, and it's okay to take that long.
And also, I'd say build connection, father-daughter dates, etc., where they have these conversations.
Yeah, that's what I'm meaning. We start having the conversations.
Yep, that's right. But our time is ticking. I want you to still walk out of here at 4 o'clock, which we will. I'm going to run through quickly boundaries and discipline, which ties into these questions very much.
We've probably dealt with a lot of it just in these conversations.
So we may jump through it quicker. 7 ways to grow your child and keep their respect. So boundaries are like guardrails. This is what I was trying to say earlier. They keep kids safe while allowing independence. The earlier children experience healthy limits, the more naturally they'll internalise self-control. The idea is start early. We're already starting with Luca. And
as a family, we were all instructed by Andrew and Michaela how they wanted to parent Luca. So they're using largely gentle parenting. So we have had to watch and we've had to learn because we all need to be on the same page as them.
Yeah. The Institute of Family Studies found in 2020 that consistent rules in the early years reduce behaviour problems later and support smoother transitions into adolescence. It's like you start here with really tight. As the kids grow, you slowly move out and you relax some of the boundaries because the early ones have kicked in and have really worked. Michael Gross, who wrote this book, Spoon-Fed Generation, he's a psychologist and a teacher, I'm pretty sure. He says boundaries are like guardrails that keep kids safe while allowing independence. If we don't teach children boundaries when they're young, their peers will teach them later, and not always kindly. So that really speaks into starting early and starting often and doing it well. Common challenges for Aussie families for boundaries. Number one, we talked about technology and screens. Kids with clear early tech boundaries adapt better to teen tech restrictions.
Yeah.
Another one for Aussies is peer pressure. Kids with early training in saying no to small temptations, for example, sweets before dinner, are more likely to resist larger peer pressures.
So you've actually put in here what I was going to say. The most important thing you need to teach your children is the word no.
And it means no.
And it means no. We had one child who gave us lots of grief early on, and we used the word no a lot. We had another one who was really pliable. I was quite happy to... We had to teach no later on. That was my biggest parenting failure. And it was done quite gently, but it was just like when you are told no, there's usually a safety reason. You're not going to pull the TV over on top of yourself. And it was like no, and then we would move the child.
With Luca yesterday, I arrived dropping Andrew home from somewhere. He was having a meltdown because he'd been told no. And no was, you can't play in the dog's water and tip it over again. He was out the front of the house having a meltdown, so I came in as Papa, picked him up and said, let's go and distract him. So we're going to play trains. So it was learn to divert and distract very early in life. That helps as well.
But there was no more water.
That's right. No was no. Push for independence is a third common challenge. Gradually building freedom from early years prevents a sudden explosion of independent struggles in adolescence.
So with this one here, I had looked at a lot of parents in our area and saw what their kids were doing and had lots of conversations with them around their parenting. And I listened because their kids were older than mine and these people were a few years older. And what I noticed was that they hadn't moved boundaries successfully as their kids got older. The other thing is although we've just said the word no is really important, we also found as many things as we possibly could to say yes to.
Yeah.
So we gave them lots and lots of yeses so they didn't feel restricted. We also talked a lot around why there was a no, and it was usually to do with safety and well-being. And then every year, as they got older, we would move the boundaries. And so my kids knew that there was no way they owned any tech at all till they were 10. Andrew got an iPod because that was the big thing. Madison's 4 years younger. And so she got an iPad mini. And so that was 13th birthday that they got their first own little bit of tech. But we had given them a yes, if that makes sense. And so as they got older, it was, Madison, can I have bikinis? You can have a bikini when you're 14. And
You said her name again. But
I did. Oops. But I wasn't talking about something naughty that she'd done. So, it was that type of thing. For Andrew, it was like the Apple Watch for his 18th, and then he had to wait ages because it hadn't been released. So we found things that we could say yes to, and we tried to keep some things special. So, Pathfinders was 10. No, Madison could not go to Pathfinders because she was 6. That was Andrew's thing, that's the gap. And so we gave them things to look forward to, which reduced some of their struggles. Andrew never wanted to party. Madison, she could go to a friend's party if it was their house. I knew the parents, I knew the kids who were going to be there, and there was a lot of trust around that.
And she knew that she could send me
any of us a text.
And we'll be there like a flash.
We were the pair. She didn't drink both.
Any time of the day.
Yeah, our kids were just awesome with their behaviour, but we were known as the parents who didn't drink obviously, we took her friends home on more occasions than we can count. So that was you may go to a birthday party at the parents' house, we will pick you up at 10:30.
And your friends.
And any friends, and often I'd turn up and she'd come out.
On a carload.
And she'd come back and say, Mum, can you take home X, Y and Z? And I would say, yep, and then I would take them home. So that's the kind of relationship we developed, but we only did that through lots and lots of talking.
Yeah, which brings us to this point, which Princess Hemphill in the book What It Takes to Heal says, early boundaries provide security for our kids.
Yep.
Later boundaries provide direction. And that's what we need to keep in mind.
We also talked about where do you want to go in life. So if you're going to do this now, how is this going to impact you down the track? What do you want on social media? We don't want anything, Mum. Right, well then don't put it there. Andrew, you want to be a pastor. Do you really think that going to your friend's party, even though it's at their parents' home and you will not be drinking, how do you think that might look if they tag you in something? And both kids were really sensible and went, we don't want that. So we were very blessed, but we did start talking to them about stuff like this when they were maybe 8 or 9.
Yeah. This is a book I've been reading recently. I got it when I was in America. One thing I do when I go travelling, and my wife smiles at this, I come home with a whole lot of books that I find that's not here. But this one I think will be out shortly.
Now he just gets his daughter to go to the local bookstore in the UK and post it.
It's one advantage. But according to Arman and Faye, your child's developing brain does need limits. Rules and limits provide a sense of safety. And also they're saying here, decades of research shows that authoritative, where you're firm but gentle, not authoritarian parenting that involves setting firm and loving limits, helps kids develop. So authoritative is, sorry, I've got not quite right there. Authoritative parenting is setting firm and loving limits, which helps kids develop.
Yep.
Responsibility, independence, social skills, academic performance and good behaviours.
So authoritative gives them a path about which to follow.
Yeah.
Whereas authoritarian is controlling and it gives them no self-agency. So kids need to feel like they've got a bit of agency.
Yep. And also they found that children and teens who grow up with limits and boundaries and rules are less likely to experience mental health, behavioural issues such as anxiety, depression or substance abuse, which is an interesting finding in their research.
Yep, but you've got to remember that sometimes anxiety, etc., can be genetic and it's not to do with parenting. It can be exacerbated by parenting.
So let's race through in the time we've got remaining 7 ways to enforce boundaries and discipline with our children. Number 1, set clear, age-appropriate rules early. Early is gentle hands, later respect each other's space, including your children, each other's space, you've got more than one. Again, the Australian Institute of Family Studies highlights the clarity in preschool years, builds predictability, making adolescence less oppositional later. So the idea of starting young, starting early with those rules. I know now it's a bit late if our kids are already teenagers, because we need to sort of ease them into it rather than going, as I say, cold turkey.
Yeah, ease them into it.
Number 2, and this is one that really works well, use natural and logical consequences. Early, if young kids, you throw a toy, sorry, the toy's removed.
All gone.
Or yesterday, Luca decided he just threw his train tracks everywhere. Said, okay, let's pack them up, put them away, all gone, finished. And he cried, but he realised early on that consequences from actions. For teens, our kids knew this, misuse the phone, consequence, loss of phone. And that's it.
I'm going to Skype.
Yep.
Our kids actually never lost their phones or their tech for misuse of tech.
No.
They lost it on a few occasions for not cleaning that bedroom up and staying on the tech when they were told not to.
Yep.
That's probably going to be one of your biggest issues.
So not getting other things done because they're distracted by tech. Number 3, stay calm and respectful. I had to learn this one and keep telling myself, sometimes I'll just walk away to my shed or whatever else and come back and try again. Early parent lowers voice, models calm correction. Even with Luca now, I've got to just check myself sometimes.
And that comes down to our families of origin.
Yep.
My family was quieter, Darren's not so.
Yep. Teen, parents avoid yelling and uses firm but respectful tone, which you talked about earlier. You kept the tone down, when you weren't yelling, but you were firm.
Yeah, and look, sometimes, for whatever reason, you can yell for a short period of time to get attention, to let your kids know that something really bad has happened. But the moment you've got their attention, just drop it straight down, and then you got their attention, and then they understand that what's going on.
Because if you're escalating, they're escalating, and suddenly World War III breaks loose. So you're trying to de-escalate and keep it at this level.
Yeah, and so obviously I work with a lot of dysregulated children, and at 54, a lot of our teachers would yell. That was the teaching style. So for a lot of teachers my age, we have really taught ourselves how to reteach, because we now know that when we yell, the kids go like this. No, we're not having anything to do with it. Short, sharp noise got their attention. Okay, everyone, now we've got a problem, and it's quite amazing how much the kids will drop. It's called co-regulating.
Yep. Free playtime should be a priority. Playing with your child is called dosing. Just a short amount of quality time goes a long way and builds connection quickly. Especially with my daughter, I knew when things were flipping out and there was high anxiety going on, it was time to just go for a father-daughter date, take her shopping, or whatever it was, and the journey was what worked to build that connection and to reset and to calm things down.
So a quick trip to Max Brenner, hot chocolate, and Darren and Madison would talk, and honestly, what that did for her self-worth is just amazing. Darren, by demonstrating what a real man does and what a real gentleman does, she's picked Dan. Dan has all these characteristics, and it's because Darren modelled them for her while he was helping her deal with being a teenager. And often, when it comes to parenting, as a mum, I'd talk to Darren and we'd have a strategy. Darren would then take her out, because dads are what's really needed. I could say the same thing in the loving,
daughters,
most kind manner, but I'm mum. But dad coming in, you know, he's male, and he demonstrates to her what to expect from a male, but it's that opposite gender just really helps.
And that starts from a very young age.
Oh yes, he used to take her out at 2 and 3, and it was just awesome. I loved it.
Okay, number 5 is balance freedom and safety. Choose what hill you want to die on. Don't sweat the small stuff. Not sure how to explain that more, Lisa. Have you got any ideas?
Oh, it's easy. The example here. Choose clothes within weather limits. Okay, if you want to go out and it's 5 degrees in your shorts and your singlet top, you can. You can bet your bottom dollar that most kids will get to the front gate and they'll come back and change.
Yeah.
And so it's a consequence of what they're doing. Okay, for here with teens, it might be, yes, you can go out with your friends. We chose to be the driver more often than not, because that helped us keep our kids safe. Okay, so you would like to go to the movies. Who do you want to come? Are they meeting us there? Are their parents? Okay, they're going to meet us there, and then I'm going to drive the 4 of you home. But I would not abandon them to the theatre. I would give them the illusion of independence, and I would sit in the food court outside the movie theatre. I would often do schoolwork, and then they'd all come out and I'd take them home. But they had had a period of teenage freedom.
Yeah, and we're going right on time here, which is good. Number 6, involve kids in decisions. In other words, if you're going to make a consequence or make... early on it's like, okay, do you want to wear the pink socks or do you want to wear the green socks? And let the little Luca chooses, I want to wear these ones. So he's making his autonomy, he's choosing.
I think Darren and I were probably, not outrageous, I don't know, a lot of people thought that we were giving our kids too much say. But when we went to buy the house that we're in now, we talked to the kids about what it meant for our finances, what it cost. We talked them through the whole process of what this would mean for us as a family in the short and the long term. in the short term, it's going to mean that we're not going to do any big holidays. Not that we ever really did anything.
We couldn't afford them.
But it's simply not in our budget. But in the long term, it's going to mean this. And also in the moderate term, as kids, you've got half an acre to run around on, you've got place to play cricket. And we would do that with all major things.
Even my job, when I took the job on at the office, it was like, before I do this, we had a family discussion, and this is what the consequences of taking the job would mean. Are you okay with that?
And
I agreed I was going to be home for holidays. I was going to get home on Saturday evening if I could possibly help it. I was going to be there at certain times.
yeah, so, it's like, okay, Dad's going to be busy during term time, but he's going to be home 2 of the 3 weekends of the school holidays, and he's going to be home during these days. So we did big discussions like that, and some people would say kids should not have that much say. It made our kids feel enfranchised. They felt that they were valuable.
They were part of the decision.
They were part of the decision. And I think it was really important. Madison was 17 and we'd saved up to get a new car. Daron's car was pretty much dead. And we said to Madison, because she was in on it, Dad's got to get a car, it's got to be 5-star, it's got to have ABS braking.
She found it.
And so we involved our kids in the whole process, including the finances. And she actually came back and said, Dad, the car that you need is this Suzuki Swift, and it's got this safety package on it, and it's got a reversing camera, and it fits into your budget. In fact, it was about $2,000 cheaper. She'd even found the dealership that was the cheapest. And I know she was a bit older, but it made her feel really valued. But with supervision, she was gaining really, really important life skills. So not everyone does it this way. It's worked for Daron and I.
Okay, ticking down to 5 minutes. Last one, model the behaviour you expect. Early, respect, honesty, patience, modelled in daily routines. As parents, we model what we want to see.
Yep.
Teens, those same values are mirrored back in relationships and conflict management. Andrew Fuller, who I respect greatly as an Aussie psychologist, said children catch is really important, not just learn values. Early modelling predicts teenage behaviour more than verbal instruction alone.
Okay.
Any comment on that one?
Okay, as I've said, Daron and I came from incredibly different backgrounds. We have had to work incredibly hard on our relationship and on our parenting skills.
Yep.
And we at times have had to say to our kids, I've really stuffed up and I'm sorry. As in,
You get that one right today.
I've bellowed at someone or I've blamed them for something. I didn't get it right. And I think apologising to your kids, it's humbling, but it's really good because they learn that it's okay to stuff up and you are given grace and forgiveness.
I said this morning in the sermon that kids don't want perfect parents, but authentic parents. There's a big difference.
And recently I was worrying that I'd not been a good parent because parenting has changed. I'll be honest, we smacked our kids. That's not done today, because parenting has changed. We're going back 30 years, so you've got to give me a bit of grace. I didn't smack often, and it was only ever on the bottom with an open hand, but that's what I did. Andrew and Michaela are gentle parenting, so there's no smacking involved, which is probably a good thing. And I said to Andrew, I'm so sorry we smacked, but I didn't know anything different. And he gives me a hug and he says, Mum, we're still talking to you, so I don't think you stuffed up too much. And I know, for my son, that's an absolute... but he realised that we were human and that we were learning to parent.
And that's part of life is being able to forgive and realise our parents did the best they could do at the time.
And so, I'm obviously using all my new parenting skills that I've learnt from teaching with Luca, because, I'm grandma and sometimes I'm responsible for him. But knowing how much my parenting has improved with time has made me feel empowered to give Luca to support Andrew and Michaela in their parenting. And I feel confident that I can keep Luca happy because I've now got a better range of parenting skills than what I had when my own kids were the same age.
And look at that, we're finishing 2 minutes early. How about that? So I'm going to hand over to your host. Remember, I'm back next week, so any questions, feel free to write them down and we'll answer those next week. Next week we're including the kids, so I'm going to twist a balloon as we teach about resilience and some of those other topics, which will be fun to finish off our sessions. Do we want to do prayer? Oh, no, you're going to come and talk?
Thank you so much, everyone.
I really learned a lot from this couple, so I hope everyone really appreciate their sharing. So we are looking forward for your coming back. So that's next Saturday at 1:30. If you want to get some other resources, and there are some brochures, pamphlet outside on the table, you can go and have a look.
The last session's here as well. That's brand new off the press.
Yes, so please go and have a look after we finish here. But we are looking forward to see you again next Saturday at 1:30. Thank you. And we really appreciate Lisa to be with us, especially for this special surprise.
Awesome. Help my voice.
Yes, that's right. Thank you so much. And yeah, we'll see you next week. And yes, Alex seems to have some announcement.
It's not an announcement. I will do the prayer.
Oh, you do the prayer.
Yes, let's bow our head. Dear Heavenly Father, we are so thankful that once again that you have sent your servant, Pastor Daron, to be with us and share the important skills to be some good parents. Lord, you have given us this task to be parents, and we may not have done it well. We may stuff that up sometimes, but Lord, we are still learning, and we are improving ourselves. Just like that, you never give us up, and we will also continue to hold your hand while we are learning ourselves to be good parents. Lord, peace be with each and every one of us, so we will be able to be good parents and train our kids. They will not depart from you. And we ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
That's it. Yep. Yeah.